Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere cold, really cold. Imagine a rocky, wind-whipped coastline where the sea foams against jagged black cliffs and snowflakes drift sideways in the biting air. But these folks, they've been doing this for generations, building winter camps to hunker down until the ice breaks and the longships can sail again. Your boots crunch into the frozen shore as your longship scrapes onto a bank of frost. And if you're feeling chatty, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Around you, rugged warriors in cloaks of fur and wool unload bundles, tools, and barrels. The skies are heavy grey, the kind that promises snow, and the wind cuts through every gap in your clothing. You glance around, no modern tents here, just bundled canvas, wooden beams, and rough-cut planks. A few of the warriors test the ground, tapping frozen earth with spear butts to check stability. You pitch in, unloading bundles of furs, tools, and is that dried fish? Yup, better get used to that smell. But there's a strange calm in all this harshness, a rhythm to the routine. You can picture how this site, bleak as it looks now, will transform. They didn't just plop down wherever. Choosing a winter camp meant considering wind patterns, access to fresh water, and proximity to resources. The world narrows to your footsteps, the hiss of wind, the rhythmic clatter of building supplies. Comfort wasn't the priority, but even raiders like to be warm. The longship looks small now, half buried in snowdrifts, its dragon-headed prow peeking above the frost. He won't sail again for months. Soon there'll be fires flickering, smoke curling skyward, and walls rising against the snow. Nearby, someone laughs, shaking snow from their beard. Even here, humor survives. You're about to spend the winter with a group of Vikings. Lucky you, sailing season's over, and surviving in the frozen north is suddenly your full-time job. You might not catch every word, but the mood's light enough. She flashes a quick grin, apparently impressed you haven't collapsed from the cold yet. You pull your cloak tighter, heart warming slightly at the thought of the fires that'll be burning inside those sunterized walls. Small victories. Historians still argue whether winter camps like this were purely for survival, or whether they doubled as strategic outposts for raiding when the ice allowed, but tonight, it's just about settling in. Now, between you and me, you probably wouldn't last 5 minutes without insulated boots, a heated blanket, and maybe a steaming cup of cocoa. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The salted air stings your face as you help drag supplies onto shore. The campsite is already chosen, a flat patch of land tucked between rocky hills that shield the worst of the winter winds. The others joke in Old Norse, voices low and steady, while axes thunk into timber. The shoreline crunches underfoot, frozen seaweed tangled with driftwood. The trees nearby are skeletal, stripped by winter's hand, but sturdy enough for building. Funny thing, despite their fierce reputation, Vikings were surprisingly methodical about shelter. Your fingers go numb as you help haul timber, the rough bark scraping your palms. In the distance, a frozen fjord glitters faintly under the cloudy sky. There's an odd peace to this moment, despite the bone-deep. A woman walks past carrying a bundle of wool, her cloak trailing, boots crunching softly. The snow begins to fall heavier now, soft flakes settling on your shoulders, melting against your skin. And as the others keep working, building your new winter home plank by plank, you start to wonder, maybe, just maybe, this frozen exile won't be so bad after all. The work never really stops, not out here, not when winter's creeping in. Your arms ache, your breath fogs the air, but everyone's focused, moving with practiced ease as the longhouse begins to take shape. Your hands are raw from hauling wood, and your boots are soggy where the snow melted through. But you keep going. The roof beams curve upward, reminding you of the holes that brought you here. That's no accident. Viking longhouses often borrowed shipbuilding techniques. It made sense, really. If you could craft a seaworthy vessel to survive North Atlantic storms, you could probably whip up a cozy winter cabin to. Your fellow campers grunt approval as the frame locks together. The longhouse isn't huge, not by modern standards, but once the walls are up and the roof is covered with turf or wooden shingle, it'll feel downright luxurious compared to sleeping on the frozen ground. The wind howls across the shoreline, but the walls are already cutting the worst of it. Someone's already lighting a small fire near the site, the first sparks of warmth crackling against the cold. The others gather for a brief rest, passing around flasks of mead and slabs of dried fish. You accept both gratefully, even though the fish smells. Well, let's call it an acquired aroma. You glance toward the fjord again, where ice crystals form intricate patterns along the water's edge. Archaeological digs across Scandinavia and beyond have unearthed remnants of their winter dwellings, fragments of timber, hearthstones, even personal items like combs or carved game pieces. It's not exactly high-tech, but the Vikings knew how to keep winter at bay with the materials on hand. Thick, overlapping layers trap pockets of air, slowing the icy drafts. Cozy, right? Well, cozy enough. Signs of life persisting through the long, dark months. They provided warmth, cooked food, and cast a soft glow that made the dark winters bearable. They're musty, a little damp from the snow, but within minutes, sleeping areas start to appear along the walls. Soft spots in an otherwise rugged space. Some evidence suggests that in more permanent settlements, people built elaborate hearths with decorated stones, sometimes with intricate knotwork carvings. Cloaks, gloves, and damp tunics are draped over makeshift racks, steaming as the heat draws out the moisture. Someone's already roasting dried fish over the flames. If you thought it smelled strong before, just wait. You'd be expected to tend the fire if it faltered in the night, or guard against stray sparks catching the roof beams. You catch maybe every third word, but the mood's light. Despite the bitter cold outside, there's something strangely comforting about this space. The flickering fire, the low hum of conversation, the rhythmic creak of timber settling, farther from the hearth. You risked waking with icicles in your beard, but hey, calories are calories, especially when winter drains your energy like this. Others believe winter camps were purely functional shelters, whipped together with whatever materials survived the autumn raids. You run your hand along your own bedroll, a patchwork of sheepskin, coarse wool, and what you hope is not bare fur. It's beautiful, in a harsh, unforgiving way. Sure, it's no luxury spa, but after hauling timber, facing biting winds, and trudging through snowdrifts, it's downright cozy. But in here, the fire crackles steadily, and you pull your furs tighter, sinking into the warmth. The Viking winter has begun, and with any luck, so has your slow, sleepy survival. Within moments, thin smoke rises, followed by the faint, comforting crackle of flame. You can already feel your frozen fingers begin to thaw. You claim a spot near the central hearth, where the heat will be strongest, and already you can imagine curling up there, wrapped in scratchy wool and the lingering scent of wood. The walls are solid, the roof beams sturdy, and there is a quiet pride in knowing you helped shape this temporary home. After all, this isn't some pop-up weekend tent. This long house, it's your shelter, your dining hall, your sleeping quarters, and on particularly nasty nights the only thing standing between you and the endless Arctic wind. Others believe there were semi-permanent hubs, with stone foundations, sturdy timber frames, even decorative carvings if time allowed. The walls creak gently as snow piles against them outside, but inside, a different atmosphere takes hold. You sit, boots off, rubbing warmth back into your toes, while the others share rough jokes and pass around flasks of mead. But standing here now, hammering frostbitten fingers against solid wood, it's clear the goal is survival first, aesthetics second. Thick timber walls rise from the frozen earth, heavy beams fitted together with joints so precise they almost click into place, like the world's most stubborn puzzle. The work's far from over, but for now, you've built shelter against the snow, and in the unforgiving world of Viking winter camps, that's as cozy as it gets. You're starting to see how the Vikings earned their reputation not just as raiders, but as builders, as survivors. There's still a definite chill curling around your ankles, but compared to the biting wind outside, it's practically tropical in here. Down the center, a long hearth will glow, smoke curling up toward a gap in the roof. It's not glamorous work. The structure stretches long and low, like an overturned ship beached on land. Inside, the space will be divided by simple partition sections for families, for storage, for the animals you'll eventually bring indoors. Historians still argue about the precise layout of every camp. Some say winter settlements were temporary, just rough huts for waiting out the snow. You haul another beam into place. It's rough-hewn, the bark still clinging in places, but strong. It's weirdly satisfying, building with your hands, feeling the structure rise beneath your efforts. There's a rhythm to the construction hammer. Lift, adjust, repeat. As dusk falls, the snow thickens, and the longhouse stands taller, its silhouette sharp against the white sky. Funny thing, despite their reputation for raiding, Vikings were practical homemakers when needed, and you're part of that story now, brushing snow from your cloak as the framework nears completion. The fire crackles, sending thin smoke into the icy air. The camp feels different, already less exposed, more anchored. You stretch, bones cracking, muscles sore but satisfied. The longhouse is up, at least the bones of it, and as you step inside, the first thing you notice is how much warmer it feels. Well, relatively warmer. You run your hand along the interior walls, made of overlapping timber planks packed with moss and animal hair for insulation. Someone nearby unrolls a pile of furs, reindeer hides, bear pelts, and heavy wool blankets in muted tones of grey and brown. Vikings didn't sleep on mattresses like you know them. Today most folks bedded down on raised wooden platforms or directly on the packed earth floor, layered with straw and furs. The hearths being prepared now, stones arranged in a tidy rectangle down the middle of the longhouse. Fires were the heart of Viking homes, literal and symbolic. A woman with ash-blonde hair strikes flint against steel, sparks dancing onto dry moss. Historians still argue whether all Viking camps followed the same architectural style. Regardless, the fire flickers to life now, and its warmth is welcome beyond words. The air fills with the earthy scent of burning wood and drying wool. A few of the crew stretch out on their furs, adjusting layers of blankets and pelts, their breathing already slowing as the fire's warmth spreads. Surprisingly, sleeping arrangements weren't purely about comfort. Position mattered. Closer to the hearth meant more warmth, but also more responsibility. A soft laugh rises from the far end of the longhouse as someone shares an off-colored joke in Old Norse. Your boots steam gently by the hearth as your body relaxes for the first time in hours. The wind howls beyond the walls, rattling frozen branches. As the fire grows brighter and the longhouse fills with the rich, earthy scent of burning wood, your thoughts turn to something. You can survive cold toes, you can survive soggy boots, but a growling stomach in the dead of winter. Preserving food wasn't just smart, it was life or death. But as one of your new companions cheerfully tears a piece free with their teeth, you're reminded that in winter camps, the luxury of flavor sometimes takes a back seat to survival. You eye the supplies stacked along the far wall. Barrels of dried fish, strings of smoked meat, sacks of grain, bundles of herbs, and perhaps most importantly casks of mead. Hydration, after all, comes in many forms. That's a problem no amount of wool can fix. Luckily, the Vikings planned for this. Before the seas froze and the fjords locked up with ice, they spent weeks preparing. The stew's contents are eclectic. Tough bits of dried meat float alongside barley grains, with a handful of herbs tossed in for good measure. You spot a few curious additions: dried seaweed strips, tiny wild onions, maybe even a sprinkle of foraged mushrooms. Though with Viking cuisine, it's often better not to ask too many questions. The first bite is chewy, salty, and strangely satisfying. Sure, you're probably gnawing on 6-month-old lamb jerky simmered with barley paste, but your body, worn down by the cold, welcomes every bite. Not because anyone's aiming for a Michelin star, but because centuries of tradition taught these folks how to make food last. When crops wither and the sea turns to ice, your stomach growls audibly, earning a grin from one of your companions as they hand you a rough wooden bowl. You wander over to a barrel being cracked open. Inside, pale, leathery strips of fish curl in neat coils. It smells, well, challenging. Winter in the Viking North ISNTA fashion show unless you consider layers of itchy wool and animal pelts. A bold aesthetic choice, but what these outfits lack the fabric smells faintly of smoke and lanolin, the natural oil from the wool that helps repel moisture. You resist the urge to scratch. Comfort is relative out here. Mittens stitched from leather and lined with fur, the kind that makes your fingers feel instantly toastier. Thick socks, yes. Even Vikings appreciated a good pair of socks layered under sturdy boots. And your cloak, fastened with a bronze brooch that glints faintly in the firelight. A blue-dyed scarf here, a carved bone pin there. And beneath all that practicality, someone nearby's weaving cordage from strips of leather, their fingers moving with practiced ease. Another sharpens a small knife, the blade glinting in the low light. Everyone's busy, tending to clothes, tools, or repairs, the endless little tasks that keep winter life running smoothly. A quiet pride in craftsmanship, in making the most of what harsh winters allow. Your trousers tie at the waist with a braided cord, snug enough to keep out the cold but loose enough to allow movement when trudging through snow. Furs, whether fox, reindeer, or sheep, add another layer of warmth. The layers trap your body heat, your extremities slowly returning to life after hours in the cold. You stretch your legs, grateful for the insulation, and sip the last of your mead, the honeyed warmth spreading through your chest. Leather boots, often stuffed with hay or wool scraps, keep your toes from turning to ice. It's not glamorous, but after hours battling icy winds, you'll happily wrap yourself in just about anything. You chuckle, imagining Viking runways lined with strutting warriors, their cloaks billowing dramatically. Scratchy wool, sure, animal pelts, absolutely, but combine it all, and suddenly, Viking winter life feels surprisingly cozy. Even here, miles from civilization, style sneaks in. They more than make up for in pure practical warmth. Everyone follows the same basic template, layers upon layers of wool, linen, leather, but personal touches abound. One warrior's cloak is trimmed with fox fur, another wears intricate beadwork strung across their chest, a small token from home or perhaps a lucky charm. Salted cod, smoked herring, dried lamb, these are your staples now. Others joke about the delicacies yet to come. You raise an eyebrow at mentions of fermented shark and boiled sheep's head. The longhouse hums with quiet activity, folks adjusting furs, patching cloaks, rearranging supplies. It's a rhythm older than memory. Stockpile, settle in, endure. A reminder, Viking cuisine isn't winning over food critics anytime soon. Some say decorative details like embroidered hems or metal clasps were reserved for the wealthy, or others argue that even the humblest farmer could flaunt a bit of flair if they had the skill or knew the right trader. You'll help unpack the stores, stacking smoked sausages beside the fire to soften them. It's surprisingly satisfying, arranging the supplies, knowing every bundle they salted, smoked, dried, and fermented anything they could. Even dairy had a role. Hard cheeses and thick, tangy yogurts known as skyer often made appearances in winter diets. But inside, your belly's full, the fire's crackling, and your fingers have finally thawed. You're still not entirely sold on dried fish for breakfast, but as winter camps go, you're surviving and, maybe, just maybe, beginning to enjoy the coziness of it all. And Barrow is one step closer to making this camp not just survivable but, in a weird, smoky, fish-scented way, comfortable. Some say they relied entirely on dried goods and preserved meat. Others believe they cleverly gathered seaweed, root vegetables, or wild herbs, when weather allowed. Sweet, with just enough of a kick to blur the memory of frozen toes. Meat isn't just for celebration, it's calories, sugar, and morale, all in one wooden cup. Either way, you quickly realize that variety is not the strong suit here, but efficiency is. Historians still argue how elaborate Viking winter pantries really were. A fellow camper offers you a cup of mead, the honeyed drink warming your throat as it slides down. Nearby, someone's simmering a pot over the hearth. The aroma fills the longhouse, earthy, smoky, and a little fishy. Sure, but after hours in the freezing wind, it smells like pure comfort. You settle by the fire, blowing gently on the steaming stew. As you eat, you overhear snippets of conversation. Some folks talk about past winter storms that buried camps in snow, sea ice so thick it trapped longships until spring. Still, for all its peculiarities, there's comfort in these routines. Stocking up for winter wasn't just practical, it was cultural. You lean back against the timber beam, bowl in hand, watching the flames dance. The wind howls outside again, a sharp reminder of the world beyond these walls. As your stomach settles, pleasantly full of smoky stew and questionable dried meats, your attention turns to another essential survival trick. Dressing the part, you reach into your travel pack and pull out extra layers. A thick wool tunic, heavy trousers lined with fleece, and a long cloak woven from coarse sheep's wool. Sliding the tunic over your head, the fibers itch at first, rough against your skin. Then come the accessories. A thick woolen hat, pulled low over your ears. You glance around the longhouse, noticing the variations in your companions' outfits. Historians still debate how much of Viking fashion was function versus status. Either way, You admire the subtle signs of individuality in the sea of grey and brown. You sit by the fire, pulling your cloak tighter as the wind whistles outside. One of the older women laughs as she patches a tunic, remarking on the fashion trends of winters past apparently. Last year, bright-colored wool hats were all the rage. There's practicality behind the materials too. Wool insulates, even when damp, a lifesaver when snow sneaks down your collar. As you adjust your gear, your body finally begins to relax. Outside, snowdrifts pile higher against the walls, but in here, wrapped in your rustic winter attire, you feel ready for whatever the season throws your way. With your wool layers wrapped tight and the fire crackling low, the long, dark hours of the Arctic winter stretch ahead like an endless ribbon of silence. But here's the thing no one tells you about Viking winter camps when the sun barely rises and the snow piles against the walls. You've got to find ways to pass the time, toss the knuckle bones, score points based on how they land, and if you're lucky win a few extra bites of dried fish or an extra cup of mead. It's low stakes, but bragging rights in a cramped winter camp, priceless. You toss your set, watching them tumble to land upright, one on its side, one spinning wildly before settling. Cheers erupt as someone scores high, groans follow low rolls, but no one's really upset. It's time for Nifitafa, an ancient strategy game sometimes called Viking chess, though with far more pieces dying dramatically in the snowdrifts of the board. It's surprisingly tense, each move drawing quiet murmurs from the audience, everyone invested in the pretend siege unfolding on the first room floor. It's the rhythm of winter life, laughter, games, and distraction from the relentless cold pressing in outside. And what better way than gambling, gossiping, and battling your crewmates in highly competitive games made entirely of bone, wood, and mild bragging rights. Some even bear faint traces of red ochre paint, worn from years of play. You lean in, absorbing the strategitha, importance of positioning, the need to anticipate your opponent's moves. Before long, your fingers trace the cool surface of the bone pieces, sliding them across the board with growing confidence. There's pride here, not just in the game, but in the craftsmanship that survives alongside it. And for the first time since arriving, the long Viking winter doesn't seem quite so daunting after all. But as the night deepens and the temperature drops, another reality of Viking winter camps settles in this cozy wooden shelter. It's not just for you and your human companions. For a moment, the storm outside feels far away, replaced by this tiny, flickering bubble of warmth and tradition. You glance toward the entrance as a shaggy goat, its hooves clacking against the floorboards, ambles into the firelit space like it owns the place. Historians note that in harsh Nordic winters, bringing animals indoors wasn't optional, it was essential. Their body heat added to the warmth of the longhouse, and keeping them safe meant milk, eggs, and, when necessary, meat through the brutal winter months. Not for battling the cold, but for battling the loneliness, the isolation, the endless nights when the snow never stops falling. You hear the distant hiss of wind battering the walls, but inside, the combined warmth of Bodhi's human and otherwise creates a pocket of coziness. The animals settle in, their movements slowing as they bed down on straw piles near the edges of the longhouse. The first set of game pieces clatter onto the floorboards, handful of sheep knuckles, smoothed and worn by years of play. Some archaeological digs suggest more permanent winter camps, built separate shelters for animals, while others indicate shared living quarters, especially in rougher, temporary setups. Either way, judging by the goat trying to chew on a leather boot by the fire, you're definitely in the shared quarters camp. Someone tosses a blanket over it, earning a soft chuckle from the others. You sigh, smile faintly, and pull your cloak tighter. Welcome to the coziest, furriest winter camp you never thought you'd call home. You close your eyes briefly, the warmth of the fire mingling with the earthy scent of wool, hay, and goat breath. Not ideal, but oddly comforting all the same. Even the gruffest warriors have a soft spot for their four-legged heaters. The livestock, the goats, sheep, chickens, and maybe even the occasional cow bunk indoors with you. Their presence means milk for morning meals, wool for weaving, and, when desperation calls, meat to stretch supplies. You realize Viking winter life isn't just about braving the elements, it's about sharing space, finding warmth where you can, and maybe making peace with your new barnmates. They're part of the Viking survival toolkit, as essential as axes or cloaks. They bring their own aroma, but they also bring body heat, and in a Viking winter camp, every degree counts. It's a small rebellion against the darkness outside, a reminder that even in the deepest winter, play, humor, and connection endure. Another camper shoos a goat away from the food stores, muttering in Old Norse under their breath. It's chaotic, sure, but there's an odd comfort to it, a reminder that life, stubborn and scruffy, persists even in the deepest cold. It smells like lanolin, hay, and the unmistakable tang of farm life. But given the choice between cold toes and the occasional hoof to the ankle, you'll take the sheep. A pair of chickens flutter onto a raised platform near the wall, settling in with the casual entitlement of creatures that know their worth in eggs and stew meat. Others argue it remained a uniquely Norse pastime, a quiet way to sharpen wits while winter wore down the body. They call them knucklebones, and they've been entertaining bored sailors, farmers, and warriors long before anyone thought to invent. You settle cross-legged near the hearth as a small crowd gathers. The rules, simple enough. One of the older men chuckles as he explains the finer points of the game. Historians still argue whether these Viking games were purely for fun, or whether they doubled as low-key gambling sessions where livestock, supplies, or even favors exchanged hands. Judging by the sly smiles and side bets happening around you, probably a little of both. One woman recounts the tale of Thor fishing for the Midgard serpente sea monster so large it encircles the world. You sip your mead, picturing a god wrestling a snake the size of a continent, and decide boredom breeds the best bedtime stories. The game begins, bones rattling as they hit the floor, bouncing across fur mats and rough-hewn floorboards. Nearby, others engage in storytelling, their voices weaving legends and half-true sagas. On the floor beside the knucklebones, someone unrolls a board, carved with simple lines and circles. You watch as players take turns, one side defending a king, the other trying to trap him. The pieces themselves are works of art, smooth bone carvings, shaped like shields, warriors, and kings. A few of your crewmates offer to teach you the rules. It's oddly calming, the low flicker of firelight, the rhythmic sounds of bone tapping wood, the hum of quiet voices exchanging stories and jokes. Historians still debate how widespread these games were. Some evidence suggests Hennefort have traveled across Europe, its rules evolving with every camp, every trading post, every longhouse. You rolled the knucklebones again, your laughter joining the others as the pieces bounce wildly. And as the hours stretch on, you start to realize maybe these games aren't just distractions. Maybe they're survival tools of their own kind. You tossed the bones again, watching them dance across the floor, the warmth of the hearth, the hum of quiet games, and the soft rustle of wool cloaks create an oddly peaceful rhythm inside the longhouse. A faint bleating sound breaks the quiet as the first of the animals are led indoors. Turns out, in winter, privacy is optional, but warmth is non-negotiable. You scoot your furs closer to the fire as another goat trots past, its breath steaming in the cold air. It's not just tradition, it's survival science. You shift your bedroll slightly as a sheep ambles by, its woolly bulk brushing against your knee. Nearby, someone laughs, adjusting their furs as a chicken tries to roost on their boot. The fire crackles, smoke curling toward the smoke hole in the roof. Historians still argue how widespread this practice was. It's not all bad. The animals provide more than just warmth. You shift again, adjusting your bedroll as a sheep plops down nearby with a resigned bleat. The hours creep by, marked by the low murmur of voices, the occasional snore, and the rustling of livestock settling into sleep. In the flickering shadows of the longhouse, surrounded by furs, flames, and softly bleating animals, the goat nudges your boot again, as if to remind you who's really running the place. By now, the longhouse has settled into a rhythm of faint hum of snoring, crackling firewood, and the occasional sleepy bleat from your woolly roommates. But even with the warmth of animals and the flickering hearth, winter nights in the Viking North are impossibly long. Around you, others work quietly. Someone mends a torn cloak, another sharpens arrowheads, a third untangles lengths of wool yarn dyed in faded hues of brown and blue. The space smells of smoke, damp wool, and wood shavings, the scent of quiet industry. You'd quickly discover that the real secret to surviving those endless hours, hobbies, maybe it'll be a spoon, or a decorative brooch, or, if your skills improve, one of those little carved animals that sit by the fire, silent guardians of the longhouse. But judging by the steady rhythm of whittling, weaving, and crafting happening around you. Creativity thrived even in the harshest months. No rush, the nights are endless. After all, the outside world may be frozen solid, but in here, within these timber walls, life ticks forward in wool threads and wood shavings. Lots and lots of slow, soothing, mildly repetitive hobbies. You sand the wood's edges, shaping it gently as the minutes drift by, the flames casting soft shadows across the longhouse walls. You sip, the savory warmth chasing away the last of the evening's chill. Your carving takes shape a crude animal figure, maybe a horse, maybe a very chubby wolf, it's hard to tell, but it earns a grin from the woman weaving nearby. Wool cloaks, carved trinkets, freshly mended bootsits, a world crafted piece by piece, held together by tradition, stubbornness, and, admittedly, a lot of itchy wool. You sit cross-legged by the fire, a small carving knife in hand, a chunk of driftwood balanced on your knee. You're whittling wood, listening to old stories, wrapped in the slow, steady heartbeat of a Viking winter. The fire has burned low, but its warmth lingers, pooling gently in the space around you. Around you, others have already settled into their own sleeping spots, some curled against the walls, others sprawled on raised platforms lined with straw. The rhythmic rise and fall of steady breathing fills the room, punctuated occasionally by a quiet snore, or the soft cluck of a disgruntled chicken adjusting its feathers. It's quiet, it's repetitive, and surprisingly, it's just the kind of cozy distraction you needed. The walls creak softly under the weight of snow, and the faint whistle of wind seeps through the cracks. You smiled faintly just a few weeks ago. You might have balked at the idea of sharing your bed with livestock. Now, it's extra insulation. Perspective is everything, but inside, the atmosphere hums with the shared resilience of people and livestock weathering the long dark together. You stifle a laugh as the goat from earlier lets out a dramatic sigh, curling itself into a shaggy ball near the hearth. Across the room, someone mutters in their sleep, half-formed words drifting through the darkness. But these small sounds only add to the sense of life, of shared endurance in this tucked-away pocket of warmth. The fire crackles faintly, casting soft shadows across the timber beams overhead. Some say they hibernated, in a sense, with days blending into nights, marked only by meals, fire maintenance, and occasional forays outside to tend a camp. The walls close in gently, not in a claustrophobic way, but in the cozy, cave-like sense of shelter that humans have craved for millennia. And as you drift off, wrapped in wool, furs, and the faint scent of smoke and livestock, you realize maybe Viking winter life isn't about comfort in the modern sense. Maybe it's about sharing space, enduring together, and finding warmth, however humble, in the darkest months of the year. The fire glows softly, casting amber light across the walls. Your breathing slows, syncing with the quiet rhythm of the room. Outside, the snow continues to fall, but in here, you're safe, warm, and surprisingly content. The wool shifts into place, forming a rough but sturdy band of cloth destined for cloaks, tunics, or maybe even decorative trim if time and resources allow. Some suggest strict family zones within the longhouse, while others believe it was more of a free-for-all first come, first served on the prime real estate near the. You close your eyes, listening to the quiet symphony of the longhouse, the low murmur of sleeping breath, the crackle of embers, the occasional rustle as someone adjusts their blankets. Judging by the haphazard arrangement tonight, it's safe to say practicality wins out over social hierarchies when the temperature drops below freezing. Were people crafting and chatting, or constantly battling the elements? But based on the quiet buzz of activity around you, there's room for both endless practical chores blending seamlessly with the need to create, to pass the time, to keep minds and hands busy. Her hands move almost automatically, muscle memory passed down through generations. You catch fragments of conversation, talk of distant raiding parties, whispered debates over whose goat keeps sneaking extra hay, the ever-present question of when if the ice will break early this year. But soon enough, your eyelids grow heavy, and it's time to experience another essential Viking winter camp tradition, a delicate art of sleeping in a crowded, animal-filled, slightly damp wooden log. Your carving starts simpler, curved line here, a shallow notch there. Historians still debate whether Viking winter camps were hubs of artistic production or just survival bunkers. A woman nearby works a loom, her fingers guiding threads back and forth with practiced ease. You run your fingers along your carving, smoothing the edges. Across the room, someone stitches leather, their needle punching rhythmically through the hide. Another shapes iron over a portable brazier, the faint hiss of hot metal mingling with the crackle of the hearth. Even gossip becomes a craft. Soft voices, trade news, half-remembered tales, and local rumors. It's not glamorous, but it's grounding. Each stitch, each carving, each quiet word shared by firelight builds a sense of normalcy. You stretch, the carved wood piece warming under your hand. Someone offers a cup of warm broth, the steam curling in the firelight. It strikes you how much of winter survival isn't just brute strength, it's patience, creativity, and finding peace in the smallest tasks. Historians still argue over how much leisure Viking winter camps allowed. The hours blur. You work, you chat, you share in the communal rhythm of the camp. The fire burns lower, but the warmth lingers. You stretch again, flexing stiff fingers, and glance around the longhouse. The snow hisses against the walls outside, but inside, the hours drift by in a haze of soft conversation, flickering firelight, and the rhythmic hum of tools at work. You arrange your furs into a makeshift nest near the hearth, mindful of stray embers and equally mindful of the goat currently eyeing your blanket like it owns the place. You stretch out, pulling your cloak tighter, the layers of wool and animal hide, creating a cocoon of scratchy comfort. It's not exactly luxurious, but there's a strange, communal warmth to it all. Historians still debate exactly how Vikings divided their sleeping quarters. You adjust your cloak, tugging it over your shoulders, and sink deeper into your bedding. A nearby sheep shifts in its sleep, its wool brushing against your foot. Your body relaxes, the aches of the day melting away under the warmth of layered furs. The outside world, with its frozen fjords, biting winds, and endless snowdrifts, feels distant or cold. Silent wilderness held at bay by thick timber walls, and the collective determination of your winter camp companions. It's not all peace and quiet, of course. Historians still puzzle over how Vikings managed sleep during the relentless Arctic winters. Did they rest in shifts? Were there strict rules about who slept where? You let the questions fade, your thoughts drifting as sleep pulls at the edges of your mind. It's not the most spacious sleeping arrangement, but compared to the howling winds outside, this communal, animal-crammed longhouse feels downright luxurious. You exhale slowly, your body heavy with sleep, as the longhouse settles into quiet. The longhouse hums with quiet energy as the smell of fresh fish mingles with wood smoke and damp wool. You sit cross-legged by the hearth, thawing your hands while others work over the fire cleaning fish, slicing meat, tossing scraps to the chickens clustered near the walls. Tonight's menu, a rich, simple fish stew thickened with barley and seasoned with the last of the dried herbs. It's not glamorous, but your stomach growls at the savory aroma curling through the longhouse. The goat eyes you again, clearly still plotting, but you pull your cloak tighter and focus on the gentle bustle around you. The heat soaks into your bones, chasing away the last remnants of the icy fjord outside. Food may be scarce, but every meal in the Viking winter camp is an exercise in despite the harshness outside, there's a cozy rhythm to this shared space. Eat, talk, mend, repeat. Inside, laughter bubbles, as someone recounts a tale of a neighboring camp's runaway goat, Allegedly, last seen trying to climb onto a supply sled. The goat beside you snorts, clearly offended. You pat its woolly side, the coarse texture oddly comforting under your palm. The longhouse feels smaller now, the world outside reduced to snowflakes whispering against beams, the low creak of wood settling under winter's weight. But watching your companions trade, quiet jokes, share food, and grumble about chores, it's hard not to sense the thread of connection, woven through shared hardship and simple routines. You pull your furs tighter, the stew's warmth lingering in your belly, your limbs heavy with the fatigue of honest work and good food. But inside, surrounded by flickering light and familiar faces, it feels enough. Conversation fades to murmurs, then to silence, broken only by the occasional pop of burning wood and the rhythmic breathing of those already asleep. You wake briefly, your cheek pressed to the rough wool of your cloak. The fire now burned down to glowing embers. The faintest trace of dawn, more grey than light, lingers somewhere beyond the snow-packed walls, but morning is still hours away. You help stir the pot, watching as steam rises into the low rafters, mingling with the faint hiss of melting snow near the door. The goat remains firmly planted by your side, snoring faintly, its body heat, a small but welcome contribution to the fragile pocket of warmth you've all created together. Their edges blur in the dim glow, rough-hewn but sturdy, built with the kind of craftsmanship that understands storms, snowdrifts, and months without sun. Were they restless, counting down the days to spring? But the walls hold, the fire small though it is holds, and the stubborn, wool-dripped cluster of humans and animals inside, they hold too. But here, buried in the heart of a winter camp, you suspect it's not any one thing. It's the sum of small, steady efforts, kindling a fire, carving a charm, telling a story, enduring another night. Someone stirs, shifting in their sleep. Another lets out a gentle snore. It's quietly existing through the long, dark, one slow, patient breath at a time. You shift beneath your cloak, the warmth of layered wool, and the nearby fire seeping into your limbs, heavier with each breath. Your eyes close again, heavy with sleep, lulled by the familiar soundster hush of breathing, the faint whistle of wind beyond the door, the soft rustle of furs. Even the usual creaks and groans of the wooden beams settle into the background, like distant waves breaking gently beneath layers of snow. You think of the endless snow, of meals stretched thin but shared, of laughter tucked between the cracks of winter's long silence. The fire hums its faint glow, a quiet guardian against the dark, and the simplest of comforts, shared stories, shared spaces, and the promise of sleep beneath heavy winter skies. You sink deeper into your furs, your muscles release in their last hold on tension, your breathing slowing to match the sleepy rhythm of the room. You are safe, you are warm, and the long, peaceful dark will hold you, steady and quiet, until morning comes. A hen clucks once from the livestock corner, then quiets, settling back into its feathery pile. Or did they settle, as you do now, into the slow rhythm of dark, quiet endurance? Likely both. Even here, curled among furs and flickering shadows, you can feel the ache for sunlight yet, also the strange peace in the monotony. Beyond the walls, snow falls in soft, endless drifts, blanketing the fjord, the frozen mountains, the wide, whispering forests, turning the world to muted shades of white and grey. You trace the runes etched into the wood with your eyes, half-recognizable symbols of protection, safe passage, maybe a few declarations of love or stubborn ownership. But inside, tucked beneath furs, beside glowing embers and snoring livestock, you drift toward sleep, carried by the quiet resilience of those who've weathered these nights long before you. A rare luxury, saved for long nights like this. You picture the fjord, frozen and vast, the mountains beyond, cloaked in snow, sharp edges softened by winter's hush. Somewhere out there, ice cracks beneath its own weight, trees grown under frozen branches, distant waves lap unseen shorelines beneath layers of ice. They break it into pieces, sharing without ceremony, and you savor your bite, the subtle sweetness a fleeting reminder of warmer seasons. It's hearty, if a little fish-heavy, but every spoonful reminds you how much effort goes into feeding a winter camp, from ice fishing to foraging to the quiet alchemy of boiling barley over a fire. Dried fish, preserved meats, root vegetables, and barley were staples, but archaeological finds suggest occasional surprises: honey, imported spices, and fermented delicacies when supplies allowed. Tonight, though, it's all about stretching the basics into something warm and filling. Outside, winter holds its quiet dominion, but inside, for now, there is warmth, there is shelter, and there is the comforting promise of another ordinary, survivable night. As bowls are passed around, conversation flows easily, a thread of daily updates. Mild complaints about the goat, quiet jokes about the snowdrifts growing taller by the hour. Historians still debate exactly how varied Viking winter diets were. You sip your stew, the hot broth chasing away the lingering cold. Nearby, someone unwraps a small cloth bundle, revealing a treater rough, honey. Outside, the wind whistles softly, rattling snow against the wooden walls. As the meal winds down, bowls are stacked, and the fire rekindled. The group shifts naturally into the slower rhythm of evening, a few tending tools, others braiding cord, some simply stretching out beneath heavy cloaks, eyes half closed as sleep begins its steady pull. You lean back against the timber wall, watching the embers glow. Historians still argue whether Viking winter camps fostered genuine community or were simply survival arrangements, strangers thrown together by necessity. The goat shifts beside you, finally dozing off, its body heat adding another small shield against the creeping cold. The fire dims, shadows softening the edges of the longhouse. You close your eyes, the scent of smoke, wool, and barley clinging to the air, the familiar weight of exhaustion pulling you toward sleep. The deep night presses on, long and unbroken as only a Viking winter can stretch it. Around you, the longhouse breathes as one soft, steady inhalations, the occasional rustle of furs, a sleepy murmur drifting from someone's dreams. You roll onto your back, staring up at the timber beams overhead. Historians still puzzle over the day-to-day mindset of Viking winter dwellers. The embers pulse faintly, breathing light into the longhouse, one soft glow at a time. You close your eyes, drifting between sleep and thought, letting your mind wander beyond the walls. The longhouse creaks as the wind nudges against it, testing the walls, reminding everyone who's really in charge here. You think of the sagas whispered hours earlier, of Egil, the poet warrior, of Thor's carved hammer, of the quiet rituals, and the fish pulled from the dark waters. Historians still debate how much of Viking endurance was brute strength versus cleverness, stubbornness, or sheer community resilience. The goat snuffles in its sleep, pressing closer to your side, reminding you once again that survival isn't glamorous. It's wool, wood smoke, scratchy blankets, and shared body heat. The embers glow low, casting faint halos of warmth against the timber walls. And so, the longhouse settles once more into stillness. Outside, winter reigns, vast and silent. The longhouse fades gently into silence now, the soft glow of embers casting faint halos along the beams, their outlines blurred by the haze of sleep. The faint crackle of the hearth slows, matching the rhythm of your own steady inhale. Exhale, the quiet heartbeat of this winter shelter. Inside, it is still. The goat at your side breathes softly. The livestock settled into sleep, the last murmurs of conversation long since faded. Your body relaxes, heavy and warm, your mind softening at the edges as the hours stretch forward, long, quiet, and uninterrupted. The longhouse cradles you in its quiet shelter, the weight of the world outside drifting away, replaced by the steady warmth of tradition. Endurance. Let yourself drift, now, the snow falling endlessly beyond these walls, the night carrying you gently forward,